Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I just started the recording for this session. Please keep in mind that everyone will be muted for the duration of this session. It'll just be me talking, so we shouldn't get any feedback noise or anything like that. Hopefully you can hear me quite clearly. If not, please let me know. There's a chat box there, and there's also a question box. So at any time throughout the presentation, please let me know if you need anything. I have my colleague Darlene Scott watching on here today, and she will be unmuted shortly to give you a bit of information about the project that I'm working on here at Community Sector Council. So, good afternoon, everyone. I am Tina Mulrooney, and I will be bringing you through today's free webinar on employee performance management for nonprofits. As you may already know, this is the second free webinar in the series of 4 webinars. So we have one each Wednesday for 4 weeks straight. Next week we will be doing employee retention next Wednesday evening, a very convenient time. And the following Wednesday we will be doing one at this same time as the one today. So to introduce myself formally, as I said, my name is Tina Mulrooney, and I'm a HR specialist at the Community Sector Council, Newfoundland and Labrador. I was hired for the Creative HR 18-month pilot project. One of the objectives of this project is to provide learning opportunities to the nonprofit sector, and I'm very much looking forward to the next 18 months. It's actually now only 14 months remaining, but we've been doing some great work so far. This webinar series is a 4-part series. We're currently on the second webinar out of 4. And we've covered topics such as recruitment and selection in the first webinar, performance management in today's webinar, employee retention, and employee departure. So love to see you at the other webinars. And just to note, we will be putting the recordings online. As I said, this session is being recorded at a very soon time. So we will be doing that very soon over the next week or so, once we download the session. So to introduce me, my background comes from the banking industry in Newfoundland and Labrador, and I also have some experience in the oil and gas industry in Newfoundland and Labrador that I feel has been great in preparing me for this new role at the Community Sector Council. I started here in January. I've always had a passion for the people side of things. I graduated here in Newfoundland and Labrador at Memorial University with a Bachelor of Commerce with a focus in Human Resources in 2010. And I recently completed my Master of Employment Relations degree in October of 2016. So this was the next logical step for me in my field, and I'm really enjoying the role so far. Getting to work with some great organizations in the nonprofit sector. Part of the project that I'm working on is bringing learnings to the nonprofit sector. So very happy to be doing that today with you. I wanted to alert you to our website, first of all, so you can see a bit more about Creative HR, the project, and you'll see here on the left-hand side, Creative HR is there on the bar on the left. So you can go in, check it out, and see some of the great, exciting things that we are doing with this project. And as well, we have a lot of other things on the go. So we have a lot of other events. Financial management is another part of the Community Sector Council work. They have an 18-month pilot project as well called Buy the Books, so you might want to check that out. Lots of free events associated with that as well. Lots on the go at this time of year, so it's very exciting. Darlene will say that we have the least pretty website, I guess, but it's the most resourceful website. Lots of great resources. You can check out everything we have here along the left-hand side when you have time. So we have a presence on Facebook and Twitter, so we ask that you please check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you have a great time today, please do mention it on social media. This session will be recorded, as I mentioned earlier. I just wanted to ensure that everyone knows that, and it will be provided at a later time for you to review. So what will be covered in this session today? I will be providing an introduction to performance management including the importance of planning, monitoring, and reviewing performance. We will look at performance assessments, including how to develop performance assessment forms, how to develop policy and information, even regarding 360-degree feedback. We will look at employee training, including managing professional development, rewarding and recognizing employees. And we will also look at managing conflict in the workplace, including common sources of conflict, information surrounding conflict styles, how to be strategic about conflict, and how to deal with difficult situations in the workplace. So to let you know, this presentation, along with the others, is informative in nature, and it's not advisory in nature. So unlike a lawyer, we can't tell you what to do. We can provide you with information and resources so that you can develop your own policies or procedures that suit your organizational needs when dealing with human resources. So we've developed a model here at the Community Sector Council for human resources topics relevant to nonprofits. So I'm going to take this time now to call on Darlene Scott, my colleague here at the Community Sector Council, to bring you up to speed on the Creative HR project. So I'm about to unmute her now. Darlene, you're on the line.
Thank you, Tina, and welcome to everybody who's with us online today for the webinar. Really appreciate having Tina Mulrooney on tap as our HR specialist. The Creative HR project was conceived by the Community Sector Council based on a series of consultations and research over the years, actually, about the lack of specific HR services for especially small and medium-sized nonprofits in Newfoundland and Labrador. If you're a really large nonprofit, you might even have an HR specialist on staff. So that's not the case if you're smaller, and volunteers and staff work together to try and get the HR function done in our nonprofit sector. And we are actually a fairly large sector. We do have lots of employees and we have tons of volunteers. So we have a large workforce. What we're trying to do in Creative HR, and it is a pilot project funded by the AES&L Department of the Provincial Government through the Labour Market Partnerships, is to try to do an improved needs assessment of what we actually need in HR in the labour market in our community, because we have a little bit of national information but not a lot of Newfoundland information. We want to do skills building, and hence that's why we're having the webinars and in-person sessions that Tina is talking about. So we want to actually build skills with people like you in the HR function. And today's topic is really exciting, performance management, because we don't always get around to that in the sector. And we're also working on trying to improve online resources for you, and maybe examine the issue of perhaps networking with people around the province. I know that's difficult. Not everybody wants a new network with a new governance structure and more meetings to attend, but we're going to try and be creative about how we continue to talk to you at the end of this pilot project about HR issues. So get in touch with us anytime. At the end of the webinar, you'll notice that Tina has her contact information, and we have a toll-free line. You can call the Community Sector Council in the daytime, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, at any time, toll-free, and we will answer the call, and if you leave a message, even in the evening, we'll get back to you. So please stay in touch, and thanks, Tina, for welcoming me today, and I look forward to the webinar.
Thank you, Darlene, and a great job by Darlene. Always appreciate having her with me. She's my sidekick in this Creative HR project. So thank you, Darlene. I'm about to mute you again there now. Okay, so moving on. Darlene did a great job bringing you up to speed on the HR project. And as she said, I am available to be contacted regarding any HR issues seen in the nonprofit sector. My contact information will be at the end of this presentation. So you are all here today to learn about employee performance management in the nonprofit sector. This information could also be relevant for community groups and even small business groups who do not have access to a human resources person on staff. So as Darlene mentioned earlier, not everyone has a HR specialist. If they do, they are quite fortunate. And what our goal is in this creative HR project is to be available as a free resource to provide support and help to you. To start, I just wanted to bring you to this quote on performance management. Performance management traditionally tends to be tied to readily measurable indicators of success. So this could be revenue or sales in the for-profit sector. Nonprofit organizations are different in that they have goals and mandates that need to be used to measure performance. So the definition, as on the screen, performance management is an ongoing process of communication between employee and supervisor, and okay, sorry about that, between whatever happened here on this slide, I'm not too sure. But either way, we can see the definition. It's an ongoing process of communication between supervisor and employee that happens throughout the year, and it has the goals of supporting the strategic objectives of the organization. That's the source there, and it's Berkeley. It's just a generic definition, so I'm sure you could all find another great definition online. But in layman's terms, so to speak, it's communicating throughout the year about performance of an employee. So I want you to think for a minute about some reasons we would do performance management. And although this is not a very interactive session, if anyone wants to put some ideas in the chat box, I welcome you to do so, or the question box, whatever works easiest. I'll give you a minute there now to do so. So I'm going to send a test out to see if it works in the chat box. And if someone could just write a response why you would do performance management within an organization. If everyone feels shy, I can move on. Okay, excellent. I'm seeing somebody is writing in the box. So this is great. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to read them out there now. Excellent. So thank you, everyone. I'm seeing the responses come through here now. So we have one individual has said, okay, I'm going to go from the bottom. Okay, yes, it works. Thank you to that individual for writing that. Some people think we need to do performance management to report to our funders. We also need to do performance management to recognize good performance. We need to do it to ensure we are disciplining employees fairly and effectively, so that employees and managers can be on the same page is one of the responses. Excellent response. We want to promote and improve employee effectiveness. Excellent response. On the job expectations. Performance management is key to ensuring people are able to do their work effectively and with the support they need to be successful. Excellent job. It's a great way to keep employees engaged and make sure they feel like their work is valued in an organization that may not be able to monitor, as much as they would like to, the work that they do. Great. You want to do it for compensation, for raises. Great response there. To ensure that staff are compensated properly, more money for staff when they deserve it, better pay, to improve the quality of work and create a positive environment, to recognize employees, and to discuss any needs that need to be further developed. So some great responses there. I really appreciate everyone writing in the box. Great exercise. So now I will bring you to why we do performance management. So these are just some of the answers, and again, you all got most of these answers right. You want to be able to, uh, meet the goals and objectives of the organization. So quite generally, the organization may recognize that they have improvements to make from participating in a performance management process, and they simply want to get better. It could be that an organization would like to improve their impact on the community in which they work and volunteer in. For example, the community base may be looking for resources and tools, and it's possible that performance management discussions could be centered around how you can do the best job possible with the clients of your organization. Performance management is an opportunity for team members to share their success and thrive. An example of this is providing employee with formal feedback on when they're doing a good job and providing specific examples of their success. It can be used, as most of you said, to align compensation with the duties and responsibilities of a role, and it can be used to reward employees. It fosters accountability, it depersonalizes issues, validates expectations, which some of you touched on, and it helps ensure equitable treatment among staff. It supports ongoing communication, most importantly, feedback and dialogue relating to personal goals within the organization and goals as a whole. So ideally, for performance management to work properly, you need to be able to ask yourself 3 simple questions. You want to ask yourself, is your organization any good? Is it getting any better? And how do you know? And 100% of people will be able to answer this question normally, and that's why performance management is important. So as I said, performance management is essentially a process that allows managers and employees to work together towards a common goal by way of communication. It is important that 3 things are evident in a performance management process. Important to plan, monitor, and review employee work objectives and their overall contributions. It can be difficult in nonprofit organizations to quantify success. For example, on the surface, I may host a HR learning session for a nonprofit group, but I may not be easily able to measure how this has allowed organizations to reach their own goals. So quite often, the nonprofit sector has a lot of very passionate, excellent individuals that are reaching some great goals, but it's difficult to quantify these goals. Performance management is continuous in nature, and it needs to be done year-round, every week, whether it's small conversations about how a session went or how a meeting went, things like that. Continuous feedback. So ideally, for performance management systems to work efficiently, you would start with well-designed jobs and well-written job descriptions. You would also have the ability to provide effective supervision and support to an employee. It works best, performance management does, when employees have a comprehensive orientation at the beginning of their job in order to set them up for success. So what I mean by this is start from the beginning, provide examples of the expectations in the workplace, set an employee up for success, and also open up the door to ensure they are comfortable in coming to you to discuss any issues they may come across. A positive and supportive work culture is critical for performance management system to work to its full potential. So quite often there are challenges with performance management in nonprofit organizations. What I mean when I say culture is a challenge is that most individuals understand performance management is a type of command and control process, and they feel that implementing this structure could cause a situation that does not directly reflect the organization's values or principles. It's kind of a scary process. It's a daunting process. This false perception of performance management could cause nonprofit supervisors and managers to steer away from implementing performance management. Quite often there is reliance on a voluntary nonprofit board, which introduces challenges to the nonprofit performance management process. People aren't able to directly observe employees and what they do day to day. It is the role of boards to evaluate the CEO or executive director of an organization, and quite frankly, failing to implement a process to measure those individuals' performance could be detrimental. Generally, in the nonprofit sector, performance management can be a challenge due to the lack of resources, skills, and/or time, or even the manager's ability to provide effective performance management communication. So I said here on the slide that there are no norms, but there are a wide range of practices used. So I don't really have a poll or anything to do in this session, but I would love to talk to you all if you want to reach out. Love to hear from you to see if you have a performance management process in place. And some of you may have an excellent thing going. So it's all about sharing resources and talking about what works. So instead of focusing on we are doing it because it has to be done, it's recommended to focus on the benefits of performance management within an organization. In order for a performance management system to work, you must ensure that you invest time into the practice and not let it lag behind. We know that communication is hard in any workplace situation, as everyone is so busy, day in, day out. A lot of things on the go. Performance management should be done consistently every day. You want to ensure that you create an open door policy of trust that allows for employees and supervisors to continually reflect on where they are going in relation to the organization's goals. So we've all been in that situation where the door is closed, whether it be in our current roles or in the past, but someone prides himself on being open to communication. So what we want to happen is to live, speak, and breathe the type of behavior you want to see in the organization. So commit to following up. Nothing worse than something getting lost in the wash, so to speak. I find that working in the nonprofit sector allows people to be very creative, and it's a great opportunity for people to meet goals and the mission of the organization when looking at performance management. Performance management is not just about evaluating staff, but it's about motivating staff. It gives employees something to reflect on and to continually improve. I don't know about everyone else here, and I know you're all muted, so you can't really tell me, but when I feel a sense of direction on where my work is going and how I'm doing, I become very motivated. It's great to hear whether something went well, even if there's area for improvement. At least you know the direction you're going. There's definitely no one-size-fits-all performance management system for nonprofit organizations. You need to find out what works for you and your organization. If you do not have a performance management system in place, it would be great to start from scratch with simple resources. So I do have some handouts attached to this presentation. There are 4 there. One includes the slideshow itself, and others are resources and examples of performance management process. So, you know, if you don't have one in place currently, you could look at the resources, do a bit of research. It's all at your fingertips. I will send out, actually, as long as you download the resources, you should be able to easily click the links instead of typing it all out. So if anyone needs me to send it out again, please let me know. The beauty of the Creative HR project is that I am available as that free resource to support you guys. So please reach out whenever you need to. As I said earlier, there are 3 recommended phases that you should use when doing performance management. They are plan, monitor, and review. So the first phase, plan, is a collaborative phase whereby the employees and managers get together to review employees' job description, to determine if it actually reflects what the employee is currently doing. And then, changes can be made if necessary. It creates a link between the job description, the work plan, objectives, goals, and the overall strategic plan. Phase 2 is monitoring. A performance management process will not work or be effective if performance is not monitored. Monitoring day to day does not mean watching over every aspect and every task. That's not what we're saying here. That can also be known as micromanaging. And I'm glad that we can all not talk about that, because I'm sure you could all tell me some stories of, things you've experienced in your life, whether it's at work or at home. But when people micromanage, it makes it impossible for people to grow and flourish. So what we don't want is to focus on, heavily monitoring someone, but we would like to focus on achieving results. We'd like to focus on individual behaviors and team dynamics in the work environment. Coaching is actually something that's really important in performance management. Direction, guidance, and support is required for activities and tasks. You could do coaching as part of regular meetings, or you can set aside some time to sit with your coach and just have a chat over a coffee. So as a coach, managers need to recognize strengths and weaknesses of their employees and work with them to identify opportunities and methods to maximize their strengths and improve those weak areas. Listening skills are extremely important. Feedback is also extremely important. So those that have this job, the coach job or the monitoring job, are not expected to have all the answers, but they are expected to know where to find the answers. So the power lies in being able to ask the right questions as a coach. When you provide feedback, it is important for you to be timely, specific, and frequent. Communication is always key. It's always recommended to nip a problem in the bud, a common saying that I've heard over the years. What this means is to address a problem before a significant problem comes up. So during this communication process as well, you can identify barriers. So for example, if an employee stumbles upon a barrier that is not being able to communicate frequently, it's a great time to ensure that you have an action plan going forward to determine if extra support or communication is required. Whether it's setting up a meeting in a calendar and sticking to that meeting, or maybe just dropping in and have a 5-minute update between an employee and a supervisor. All of those things could be helpful. The goals of a nonprofit organization must always be kept in mind at all times throughout the monitoring phase. Monitoring performance requires direction, guidance, and support. So it's not always a good idea, well, it's never a good idea to always focus on what an employee is doing wrong or what they're not up to snuff with, but to focus on what they are doing well and emphasize those strengths. And I think once you get talking about the positive, it's a great opportunity to also talk about improvements once you mention those positive things that employees are doing. Start with the positive, so to speak. So, as I said earlier, coaches are integral players in any performance management process. Coaches must demonstrate the skills that they would like others to embody. This is so important, and I'm sure you would all agree. Coaches must be able to make communication happen and provide relevant feedback. They should provide reassurance of an employee being on track when new skills are practiced and when good things happen. If a coach is always too busy and cannot be reached, it is a recipe for disaster. So it's important to make time to care for that employee and be there for any questions to be answered. And, I'm not in the nonprofit sector too long, but in the last 4 months, I've noticed some really great positive things, and I've noticed people talking about great experiences within the nonprofit sector in relation to coaching and communication. So I think people are doing a great job, but communication is something that can always be improved, regardless of whether it's going well or not. Um, it can be a touchy subject in some organizations, so quite often people are so passionate about what they do, and they may not set aside time for things that are important, such as coaching or performance management. Um, so as I said earlier, one neat communication tip is to set a time to get together every week or every second week. Schedule it in your calendar and ensure that the meeting happens, whether it's just a casual chat over coffee or a more structured type of meeting. I think this applies to relationships in everyday life as well. If you think about the people that you have in your life and that are most important to you, you make time and you schedule time. The same process applies for the workplace. And I just wanted to end that note with a coach needs to have good listening skills, be honest with their feedback, and be able to ask the right questions to the employee to ensure they know where to look for the answers, should they not know right away. Yeah, so I'm sure you're all thinking of examples of great experiences and not so great experiences. So this is what's recommended in the research. Now to feedback. Feedback is an integral part of the performance management process. Feedback needs to be positive, timely, specific, and relevant. Constructive feedback is the term used to describe what alerts an individual to an area which performance could improve. This could be, constructive feedback could occur when someone is arriving late to the office, for example. If a pattern is noticed, a casual conversation, a constructive conversation should occur about the behavior pattern. It is essential that supervisor or manager, whoever provides that role in the performance management process, prepares for the feedback or the conversation that they will have with an employee. Think through what you want to address in the meeting or conversation, confirm the facts or the performance issue, and make sure you know that you can describe what is happening or what has happened in the past. So you need to be clear about what the issue is and even about the consequences that could occur if the performance does not improve. I'm going to jump back there now. I wanted to mention that it's always a good idea to meet in a location where the privacy of the individual is protected and there are minimal interruptions. So it depends on the environment, but quite often there's always a room somewhere that you could get together privately with an employee. You would never want to embarrass an employee. You'd never want to address performance out in the open. Definitely a suggestion. And I'm sure you're all doing great at this, but I just want to let you know that this is in the research. Also, be calm so that you can approach the discussion objectively with clarity. Timing is everything. So if you are a coach or a supervisor and you haven't had the greatest day, it's probably not the best day to have that feedback discussion with another individual, because you could be swayed either which way, and it could turn out to be a little more negative than intended. You want to state the facts when in any performance management discussion. So use a non-threatening tone, describe the performance issue, provide facts, be non-judgmental, and provide specific examples of what happened. You could also emphasize the negative impact it could have on others within the workplace or organization when having this feedback discussion. So if we were all in person, we would have a great time with this example, but we're not. So I'm going to run through it. This is a feedback example of what not to say. So it's highly recommended to never say, "You are always late." So you might get a chuckle at that one. This example is far too general in nature and extremely judgmental. So I'm sure you can all think of a way to address this by being clear and providing examples. If I were faced with this situation in a workplace and I was the supervisor or coach, I would get the employee in a private setting to be able to informally discuss the issue. You may want to say something like, something specific, like, you were late 3 times last week. When you arrived for the staff meeting, you missed an important discussion about our new fundraising campaign. You would want to be factual and specific and address the performance issue of being late. Okay, so my webinar just notified me that I might be experiencing connection difficulties. So there's not a lot I can do about this, but hopefully you can all hear me, and the recording will be online if there's any part that you are missing briefly. All right. So you can have a bit of fun with this, but as long as you stick to the facts and provide concrete examples, it should be an effective discussion. Phase 3 of the performance management process is review. So, like I said before, you want to prepare for the performance assessment or appraisal meeting, and any communication that you will have in this meeting should be prepared for. There should never be any surprises, and you should be easily able to explain or describe what has happened or is happening. You want to make sure it's private with minimal interruptions, and be calm and approach the situation directly. What should a formal performance assessment meeting accomplish? It should summarize the work accomplished by the employee over the previous year, and this is just based on doing performance management annually, the performance meeting, that is. You should document challenges on the performance appraisal form and identify areas for training or development. You should discuss any barriers that may have gotten in the way of an employee reaching their goals or may get in the way in the future. If communication is one of those barriers, which quite often it is, definitely think about scheduling those meeting times throughout the year on a regular basis to ensure the employee is on the right path. Nothing worse than, having a poor performance management process where the employee is only spoken to once a year, not throughout the year. There's surprises. They don't quite understand where things are coming from. There's nothing worse than that. So that's why the information in this presentation should help you prepare and avoid that type of a situation. We don't want it to be a scary process, and we want people to get something valuable from the process on both sides, employee and supervisor. It is recommended to always sign off on the performance appraisal form with a signature. If there is a disagreement between the supervisor and the employee, it's always a great practice to allow for an opportunity for the employee to write down what they think the disagreement is, or type it into the form, whatever system you have, and both parties should sign the copy once these comments are added. You want to have a paper copy including signatures for both the employee and the supervisor or manager. So right here is an excellent sample performance review form, which is in your handouts. So as you see, very clear there, it's in your handouts, and you can take some time later to go through this. An excellent resource. It's a little complex, but there are some really valuable parts on the form that you could use to make your own form if you don't already have one. Moving on to rating scales. So what you want to do with rating scales within your performance management document is keep it clear and simple. Use words that are not easily misinterpreted. If you do have words that can be easily misinterpreted, define those words. Ensure that there is no misinterpretation. For example, almost always can be misinterpreted. It will be helpful to determine what this means for your organization and define it. So you could say almost always is 95 to 100% of the time. Make sure it's clear. So here are some examples of rating scales that you may decide to incorporate into your performance management form. As you can see, someone either exceeded the objective, met it, or did not meet it. Very simple way of saying things. And for key competencies or other behavioral measures, you may want to consider the words such as almost always, frequently, sometimes, seldom, or almost never. This is also on your resource list as well, so take a look when you have a moment. 360-degree performance appraisals. This is something that's come up in a number of the in-person sessions that we did at the Community Sector Council, and it's an interesting type of performance appraisal system. It's definitely not for every organization, and it may never work for some organizations. Personally, I can see these systems working best in an organization where they already have a basic performance appraisal process in place. The ultimate reason why this 360-degree feedback would be valuable is it's helpful for senior managers to receive some feedback. You must be careful with this, of course, as some of the feedback for these high-level positions may be difficult to take or to put on paper, and you want to ensure that it's not a confrontational situation or, not judgmental, things like that. I think this process would work very well in a situation where there's a feeling of comfort and trust within the workplace. Not all workplaces have the same amount of employees, of course, so you may have many, many employees and it might not be possible, and you may have a small team of 5 people. It might seem a little bit scary because there's always that possibility someone will be critical of someone else. I've seen it work in big organizations with more than 100 people within work teams, but I'm not too sure how well it would work in the nonprofit sector. But you can be the judge of that. If you'd like any more information on it, please do not hesitate to reach out. If you already do 360-degree feedback, love to hear from you as well. I thought it was fitting to talk about probationary periods within this presentation. Probationary period evaluations are a form of performance management. Probationary periods allow the employer and the employee to judge how they fit within the workplace. So, as you may know, with the employment standards in Newfoundland and Labrador, which dictates 3 months or less, an employee is on a probation period, whether it's declared in the job offer or not. That is the minimum standard. At any time during this period, the employee or the employer can decide to terminate the relationship with no notice or no pay in lieu of notice, anything like that. And if you can, it is recommended to state probationary period terms in the letter of offer. Always, you must comply with the employment or labor standards legislation, and it gives employers the ability to test an employee, see how they are, and end the relationship should it not be working out. This is an excellent time to mention our upcoming Community Sector Council Newfoundland and Labrador Employment Standards session. It's going to occur on the morning of May 26th, so that's not this Friday, but the following Friday, from 9 o'clock to 11:30 a.m. in person. It'll take place here at 25 Anderson Avenue. You will be seeing some communication on that soon. It's a free session. For those that can't get to it, don't worry, because we will be having a free online webinar on the same topic, employment standards in Newfoundland and Labrador. So please stay tuned for this. Very excited to be able to do this in partnership with the government of Newfoundland and Labrador. Employee training. This is also very important to mention within the performance management talk. Employee training starts the day an employee begins with the organization. The orientation or employee onboarding process is an important way to prepare the employee for what is expected within the workplace. It's an opportunity to provide information about organizational policies and procedures. It allows an employee to get a sense of the organizational culture and the values. And it's a great time for a manager or a coach to be sharing relevant information regarding the organization's mission and work. The orientation process definitely helps build relationships, and it sets the standard for communication. Being open and available to answer any questions that a new employee may have is a great practice that can be continued throughout the entire performance management process. We are now going to briefly touch on managing conflict in the workplace. Conflict is quite often something that comes up. I'm sure you're all agreeing with me now. And it comes up especially throughout the performance management process, both formally and informally. So everyone has a role to play when it comes to conflict. It is not just the HR department. Quite often nonprofits do not even have a HR department that handles conflict. It's not just the manager, it's not just the employee. Everyone has a role to play. It's important to have good knowledge of the personalities on your team and always address conflict before it escalates to a major problem. It's been said in the research that every nonprofit organization should have some form of conflict resolution process to follow within the workplace. It's a good idea to include some brief information about this, how to manage conflict, what to do if you have a complaint or if you need to resolve a complaint. It's a good idea to have this in the orientation packages or even in the employee personnel manual. So conflict and performance management are linked. Performance management communication process is a way to identify or address issues before things go wrong. It's a great idea to have informal one-on-one conversations surrounding an employee's behaviors and performance. If necessary, it is important to provide clarity on workplace expectations. So you want to ensure at the beginning of employment that there is information provided on what is accepted, what is acceptable in your workplace. And most important of all, be a model of the best behavior that you talk about. If you want to see a certain behavior within your organizations, live, breathe that behavior. When dealing with toxic individuals, you want to be firm and stern in your approach. Not judgmental, of course, but ensure that they know you can always relate back to your performance manual if you have to, that certain behaviors are not accepted in your workplace. So performance management allows for work-life balance as well. So what I mean by that is it allows employees to know exactly what's expected, what's not expected. It allows, if someone was not understanding whether, for example, the organization looks looks positively on working after hours or not, then you could have conflict with that. You want to be clear what's expected of the employee at the beginning. So, for example, we have a great work-life balance here at the Community Sector Council, and when I started, it was said to me that we do not do work after hours. Most of the work we do can be fit into a work day. So it was really nice to know that up front, and it set the stage then for my employment. So just an example. I'd like to take this opportunity there now to refer you to some great resources available on the Newfoundland HR Manager website. So this is in your resource handout. It's a great place to get more detailed information surrounding performance management, and quite often people don't know about it. Some of the links may be no longer working, but for the most part, when I checked it, everything was working. So for example, there's a Newfoundland HR Manager orientation. There's information on managing performance, a lot of the things we talked about today. So do check it out. So we're nearing the end of the presentation. I'm going to open it up for some questions in the question box shortly. And what we'd like to know is what are the HR topics you'd like to learn more about? Are there things that you feel are overlooked in the nonprofit sector when it comes to human resources? And what parts about performance management seem complicated to you or cause you the most grief or time. So I'll open up the question box there now for anyone to bring questions to my attention, and I'll do my best to answer those. So it's 3:21 there now. We will be ending soon. We've got a comment there, all is well, from my side of things. That's a great comment. Thank you. All right, so are there any questions or comments on any of these words here on the screen? Not sure why, but the questions are showing up in different spots, so I'm going to try to get to all of them. Someone has mentioned handling flex time and standard policies on the topic. So that would be something great that we could look into, how best to manage flex time and try to provide that work-life balance within an organization. And I will definitely look in to see if there are any standard policies on the topic. And I see people have been making comments throughout the presentation. Thank you so much. I can't always look at them as I'm going through, but that's excellent there. Okay, we've got another question there now. Any advice on how to deliver performance management review with an employee with anxiety? This definitely adds some complexity to the situation because performance management is not an easy process, you know, in general. If you're dealing with someone that has anxiety, off the top of my head, the best way to deal with that situation is to make the employee comfortable and you know, ensure to create that comfortable environment for them when going through performance management reviews. So that may be to do it on a day when the office is not hectic, you know, to always start with positive feedback first is a great suggestion. Maybe do a little bit of research on how to deal with an employee with anxiety. That would be a great tool. And we're all human. Performance management could cause anxiety for anyone. So you want to be in a comfortable environment, be non-judgmental. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question well, but I will be looking into that for sure. Someone did ask if we could get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation, and it is actually in the handouts there, but I certainly can send it to you if you'd like. You just need to send me a note. How often should you do performance appraisals is another question there. They recommend the actual performance appraisal meeting to happen at least once a year. Some people do an informal meeting at 6 months, and others do the formal sign-off with the signature once every year. So I hope that answers your question, but there's no general rule when it comes to what should be done. Okay, someone mentioned that the PowerPoint will not open, so I will ensure to send it out by email to you all after this presentation. There's a question there, should the board be involved in performance evaluation? Absolutely, especially when it comes to like the CEO, if you'd like to implement a process to be able to provide the CEO with feedback. Maybe not in a case of like regular day-to-day interaction, as the board may not always be there, The thing about performance evaluation is that it must be done with relevant circumstances. So what I mean by that is, you know, if Darlene supervises Tina, and then Penny supervises John, it wouldn't be appropriate for Darlene to do performance review with John if he has a different supervisor, things like that. So as long as the person deals with the individual on a regular basis, some type of performance evaluation could be relevant, but normally it's the supervisor and employee. The 360-degree performance appraisal is quite complex, and I don't necessarily know that it works extremely well among, you know, team members, but it all depends. Okay, so I'm just going through the questions here now. Bear with me. There's a comment there now. The board normally has only one employee, the CEO. They should not be involved in managers of other staff. That is correct. I guess I was just making an example there. The board normally has one employee, the CEO. They should not be involved in managers or other staff, correct? I'm just going to ask if you could, that individual could just clarify to ensure that I answer your question properly. Okay, great. Thank you for confirming that I answered it. If there's anything that's unclear, please reach out, because I know it's hard. It's hard to do this when you're all silent. Okay, I just want to make sure I've answered all the questions. I will look into the anxiety question. Excellent question. There was another question that I missed. Suggestions for performance management with an employee that has been in place for a while and has had performance issues prior to you working there that previously went unaddressed. That's a very interesting question. What I would suggest in this case is, depending on the relationship with that employee, if the individual asking that question is the employee supervisor, definitely something needs to be done. I guess if there's a performance management process in place already, you would need to discuss with anyone that may know the past history on why it was not addressed. Could it have been that there was no time? Could it have been that different people working there didn't have the opportunity or didn't feel equipped to address an issue? You'd want to just look into it and see why the issue has not been addressed. But certainly, if you want to, you know, bring it back to a respectful workplace environment, bring it back to your policies and procedures manual on what's accepted, what's acceptable in the workplace day to day, you could certainly do that, and just have a private conversation with those who have been there. Appropriate people, of course, supervisors or managers that may know something about the past history. I hope I've answered that question, and I do promise to get you guys out of here on time. If there's anything else, thank you. All right, I'm just gonna keep it open there for another minute, and then we will end off the presentation. I just want to show you my contact information here. So if you'd like to reach out and you haven't done so already in the question box, which, you know, that's a choice, but if you'd like to privately ask a question about how to deal with the situation, I'd be glad to help and try to provide resources and useful information. Okay, so if there are no more questions, just checking, final check. No more questions and no more comments, so we'll end here. Thank you everyone for taking the time out of your day, and I hope you have an excellent day. I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you.